Welcome to the Sports Science Dudes. I am your host, Dr. Jose Antonio. Co-hosting with me is Dr. Tony Ricci. You can find us on Spotify, YouTube, Rumble, and Apple Podcasts. Today's special guest is Dr. Antonella Schwarz. She's an assistant professor of exercise science at Barry University in the lovely city of Miami. Actually, I think that's North Miami, but I'm not quite sure. She specializes in muscle physiology and strength training. With a PhD in exercise science, research focuses on innovative resistance training methods, as well as sports nutrition to enhance performance and recovery. Just a brief academic background. She actually got her PhD from Liberty University in Lynchburg, Virginia, and she just finished last month. Holy smokes.
Nice work, Doc.
So she's super new. Her dissertation title is comparing, and we're going to talk about this, comparing physiological, psychological, and performance changes between myo reps versus traditional hypertrophy protocols. Antonella also got her master's degree. Guess where? What beautiful place.
The best place on earth.
And what would be the best place on earth? Tony, what do you think the best place on earth would be?
Well, currently it would be maybe somewhere in the central part of Florida, man. I don't know.
Something like that.
Yeah.
So University of Florida, Gainesville.
That's right.
You also got your bachelor's degree in Florida, Gainesville, right? And
Sure
actually in
did.
athletic training, right?
Yep.
And you know what's interesting? Nobody, okay, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think there's a bachelor's degree in athletic training anymore.
No, I was the second to last class, I believe, at Florida. And then even the years before that, all the programs started kind of closing down because now you need a master's to be an AT. So I made it right on the cusp of being able to get that in just undergrad.
Now, and I asked this actually a lot of students who want to go into AT or PT or whatnot. Did you visualize yourself working as a full-time athletic trainer when you were doing your undergrad?
Yes, for a tiny period of time. No, for 99.9% of the rest of the time.
Is that
It's
because
tough
of
work.
the beautiful hours they have, like on weekends and at
100%.
night?
100%. I mean, we could probably talk about a whole podcast, or do a whole podcast on why I knew I wasn't ever going to be a full-time AT. There's like, I mean, just the schedule, right, is crazy. And two, I found myself really questioning, what does an athletic as a trainer like really do? And why am I in my rotations doing massage, cupping, and Graston all the time, every day? And then I really was like, wait, a lot of these people that have PhDs, I admire them. Let me read some of their research. And then I'm looking at the research for these modalities, and it's not very promising.
Okay, no, this is good. This is good because I like this conversation because a lot of the modalities you see used in the allied health sciences, whether it's PT or OT or athletic training, a lot of it is not based on any data per se. So you mentioned cupping was one of them.
Right.
What's the data on cupping?
I jokingly call cupping a sports hickey. That's all it is. It's a sports hickey. It is seriously baffles me that anybody is even taught that. I mean, you can go on Amazon and buy a set of cups for $15 and do it yourself. I mean, it feels good. Sure. It's like I call it like a variation of maybe like massage or some kind of, I don't know, whatever you want to call it, but it's nothing more than a sports hickey. And I mean, I have students who are like, oh, it's redder. This circle's redder. Does that mean there's more damage in this area or I'm more sore here? Absolutely not. That is just the skin, the blood vessels. I mean, you're just popping a bunch of blood vessels.
Tony, have you ever had, I've never had it done to me, so I have no idea what it feels like. Have you ever had it done?
I've not done cupping nor Graston technique either, which to me seems like, and I'll defer to Dr. Antonella here, but it seems like there may be some merit in that, but perhaps not. I don't know.
Yeah, I just, from what I've seen, what I've read, I mean, they've done, I don't even know what study it was, but there was a study, I don't know how recent, relatively recent, on Graston and scraping techniques. And they blinded people and they did the scraping techniques with a metal spoon. And the participants all, I mean, had no idea whether it was like actual metal device or metal spoon, and reported the same similar outcomes.
Wow, okay.
You know, it's just, I mean, the human body is so resilient. How can you think, right, that a metal spoon or like a metal wand can really make real change, right? Maybe promote blood flow, I mean, maybe psychologically subjective, sure, and there's space for that, absolutely, but I don't know, I couldn't see myself in a field that relied so heavily on that to help.
Wait, so are you saying that there's a lot of hocus pocus in athletic training? Because I will quote you on this.
Don't quote me too heavy, but yeah, and honestly, I'll say, yeah, there's a lot of hocus pocus in athletic training. I mean, even in PT, less PT, more in AT, and I think that's where the field just needs people to kind of like crusade and, hey, there's a need for athletic trainers. Sure, they can serve as an incredible almost like liaison in this med field. Absolutely. In sports med, first people on the sideline, definitely useful, definitely have an important role. But in a training room, doing like the quote unquote rehab preventative care, I think there's a lot more work that needs to be done and a lot more evidence that needs to be presented to justify why are we doing these things and why are you doing the same thing for months and months on end and it's helping, but if it's helping, why are they coming back every day?
Yeah, you know what? A lot of these modalities, and I'll go back to one of the older ones, icing. People they always want to slap ice on, whether you're just sore or whatever. And we know that if you apply something very cold to tissue, certainly it might inhibit, sure, it decreases pain, but you need the inflammatory process for healing. Right. So icing has been a huge part of athletic training, huge part of athletics for, I remember, Tony, I don't know, you might remember this name, Gabe Merkin. He was an MD going back to the 1970s. Gabe Merkin, and Antonella, unfortunately, was not alive at the point, so she may not know the name. But Gabe Merkin was a physician who popularized. He may have even came up with the term RICE, rest, ice, compression, elevation. And now it looks like everyone should just skip ice, right? But RICE was taught as gospel for decades. And here's the thing. I mean, it's easy enough to do a randomized controlled trial on this. I mean, you can do simple stuff like, hey, let's induce muscle soreness through eccentric training. One group gets ice, the other group is a control, and maybe you just tell both of them, oh, by the way, both work. Ice works and doing nothing works. And just see what happens. But apparently, once something gets into the allied health sciences, in a weird way, it becomes like, well, this is what we've always done, so we're going to keep doing it. And that's how I see cupping. I see cupping has now become sort of part of the lexicon of the allied health sciences. So, what are both of you, what are your thoughts on that?
It's baffling and it's really frustrating because I want this allied health and I want athletic training. I want all that to like be fruitful and promising. And I want students to want to do these things and get involved. But I have this like internal moral struggle of like, hey, I can teach you these things, but I need to tell you that like the evidence is not there. It's not strong. And it's not what you think it is. And I just feel that the field could get a better rep if more people maybe approach it from that direction instead of like, hey, come to my clinic and pay $100 an hour to get cupping and massage and Graston, because that's going to help with recovery. I mean, I could go on forever about this topic, but to address the ice, I agree. I mean, basic physiology, right? Like cold, vasoconstriction, heat, vasodilation, like you need the inflammatory process to heal. It's the first stage of healing. So why tackle on a bag of ice when you just sprained your ankle, but you're not in excruciating pain, right? So I tell my students, think of ice as an analgesic, right? It will numb the pain. So if you are in excruciating pain, if somebody's ankle's about to burst and they are screaming, sure, tack on a bag of ice. But if that's not the case, then maybe ice is not the first intervention. Yeah.
Do you think, Antonella, that it could have some legitimacy? I mean, at the acute point of impact. So for example, I broke the cuboid and navicular, and it's true to say that inflammatory process is necessary for recovery, but I do think some people probably are hyper responders. I mean, I get it. I broke a couple of bones, grow up because now my ankle is the same size as my thigh. I got it, when we had a little bit of inflammation. I don't need it 4 gallons of it. So might there be some use? I guess my point is there is also a point to diminishing return in the inflammatory process. Am I correct, where
Yes.
you're actually muting the recovery process as well?
Totally. I think once, and that's like this is why I love numbers and objective data. Like I wish there was a way to measure, like tack on some device and measure inflammation. Like, are you at the threshold where it warrants ice or not, right? So at some point you're using like your professional, expertise to be the judge on, okay, is ice warranted here or not? But yeah, I totally agree with you. I mean, at some point, ice is totally necessary. Too much inflammation, right? We don't want it to be pooling, lead to, edema issues down the road. Absolutely. So there's definitely a place for it, especially in an acute scenario like that. But again, it's just a professional judgment. And I think that it can help to inform students, people, ATs, allied health professionals, that ice is not going to fix a problem. It's really just revolves around the inflammation. Going from there, not like, hey, this is going to solve your problem. It's going to make everything better. It's just pain reducing and, can help with the inflammation. But again, we know inflammation is important. So much nuance. That's the thing.
Right.
Yeah, Tony, I like the idea that, and Antonella, that if you're in extreme pain, then certainly, I'd rather just not be in extreme pain, put ice on it, and then, go through your recovery process. But I don't know what it's like at Barry, but I don't know how many times I've seen, let's say, a baseball pitcher or softball pitcher after practice, they'll put ice on their shoulder. Like
every time.
Yeah.
And I think I really knew that I didn't want to be an athletic trainer when in my head, I would think I should say something to this person, but you can't. Like, people are so, it's in their brain. It's sealed in their brain that they have to have that device after they pitch, after they do this, after they run on their knees, whatever the case might be. And they think you're crazy when you try to like tell them or correct them. And I think that's why I became so interested in research and academia. Like, hey, maybe if I can just like study this stuff and people will take me seriously when I tell them, no, like you don't need that. And so that really is what sparked my interest in research.
Well, has there been any kind of RCT or randomized controlled trial on cupping, for instance? Is there any?
I need to look. I don't know. I haven't seen anything recent. I would imagine that it would have popped up somewhere when I'm here. Yeah, but I haven't seen anything circulating, because if not, that would be a good one. So
I mean, that's a nice master's thesis project right there. I mean, it wouldn't be that hard to do, but I guess if it's part of the the mystery of athletic training, want to keep it mysterious. So, hey, let's a slight digression. Let's go back to more science stuff and your doctoral dissertation. I remember talking to you at, where were we? What was that restaurant next to Quarter Deck. We were at Quarter Deck talking, and we're talking about myoreps, but Tony, the worst part of that conversation is that Antonella, when she eats burgers, she doesn't eat the bun. She covers her burger with lettuce, which is kind of an odd thing. When you think about, I mean, imagine that there's lettuce on top, lettuce on bottom, and then you got burger, which I don't know, kind of bugged me at the time. I'm like, what the hell are you doing? You just ruined the burger.
Hear me out. It's not, I have to tell people, it's not because I'm scared of carbs, love carbs, eat carbs day in, day night. It's not because of that. I'm not trying to watch my weight. I genuinely enjoy a burger on crispy lettuce more than bread. I wouldn't do that for like a ham and cheese sandwich. That's weird. But for a burger, something about a burger, I think it's just the beef. Like I love beef, and the beef the bread takes away. Like it's the ratio, the beef to bread ratio is just not it for me.
That's fair. That's fair. If the bun's too big, it does ruin the burger.
It ruins it. And something about a good burger on crispy lettuce. I gotta get the fries, right? The fries.
You ever tried pretzel buns?
Yes, I think it's too hard. It's like chewy.
Oh, it's too hard?
Yeah.
Okay, well, okay, that's a good enough answer. We like you still. Okay. What the hell? Okay, when I read the title of your dissertation and you explained this to me, you got to explain to the audience your study, and you're looking at hypertrophy, right? Which is cool. Yep. Myoreps versus traditional hypertrophy protocol. So first explain, like we're fifth graders, what a myorep protocol is.
All right, so my reps, they've been around for a while. There's no existing evidence. I can't coin the term. I'm probably going to butcher his name, Borge Fagerli. He is the guy who coined this term, been doing my reps for a long time. Lots of cool anecdotal stuff supporting the use of my reps.
Wait, what's the dude's name?
Borge, Borg, B-O-R-G-E. Last name Fagerli, Fagerli.
Is he like a chef at an Italian restaurant in Long Island?
No, it sounds cool. Name. I think, oh my God, I'm gonna butcher this. I'm not even gonna give you details, but I don't know where he's from, but he's from somewhere in Europe. Amazing guy.
Okay.
I've chatted with him a little bit about my reps. And he kind of told me his philosophy and kind of what the theoretical framework for this is and the mechanistic stuff. So I'm working on a review paper about all that right now. But basically, my reps is just a training approach, and it leverages strategic rest intervals. So in a very like easier to comprehend version, you're just doing an activation set of anywhere between 10 to 20 reps. This is supposed to take you to near exhaustion, right? Volitional failure. And then without taking your traditional rest of 1, 2, 3 minutes that you would in a traditional hypertrophy, you're just taking a 5 breath rest or a 5 to 10 second rest to essentially promote fiber engagement. Like you're keeping the muscle activated and you're just doing those, I like to call them money reps. You're kind of eliminating the junk volume because you're already pre-activated because of the activation set. Does that make sense? It's kind of like a big
It's
roll.
almost, yeah, there's almost a pre-exhaustion component to it.
Yeah,
to an extent, right?
Yeah.
Are the subsequent sets, Antonella, do they change in load or are
They
they?
don't change in load.
Okay.
They
So you
don't
do the
change
10 to 20 first,
Yep.
which let's just say hypothetically, that's 40% of 1 RM, right?
Yep.
Somewhere in that range. And
Mhm.
then where would you approximately go next?
Then you take a 5-second-ish rest, and you do another 3 to 5 reps. And then you take that same rest, which is short, right? Couple breaths rest. You're still, I mean, it's painful. And then you're doing another 3 to 5 reps, basically until you can't complete 3 reps. So you're doing mini sets after that. There are mini sets with the same load the whole time. The idea behind it, so the like theoretical framework, it's essentially based off of the theory of effective reps, right? So this theory that the last 5 reps are the ones that count the most, right? You've like created enough metabolic, byproduct and whatnot. The activation is at maximal, and you can essentially create more hypertrophy happens in these later reps. There's a study, Goto and colleagues, I can't remember what year, and they basically had like 2 different groups. They both completed 4 by 10. It was intensity and I believe volume equated as well. I think they looked at the lat pull down. I don't know what else, but the lat pull down is what stuck out to me. And one group completed their set of 10 continuously. So 10 reps like you would, great, awesome. The other group completed their set of 10, but at the midpoint, so after rep 5, they rested for 30 seconds and then completed the last 5. And over time, 6 to 8 weeks, again, don't quote me, I've read too much lately, but after X amount of weeks, the group, they did the same exact program, right? So the group that didn't take that intraset rest saw significantly more growth. That basically just says, hey, like the accumulation of the reps is really what matters, right? It's that like you're creating the state of activation, fiber engagement, hydrogen ion buildup, lactate, right? Later on in that set is where the growth happens, like the magic happens. So like the term junk volume, I kind of hate using it, but junk volume, right? This first handful of reps, that's what MyoReps focuses on eliminating so that you can only do those, or you only do those money reps, like those last 5, give or take reps where you see the most growth.
I think that's funny that you're using jargon that you would find like in an adult film.
It's the best way, honestly. Like this
And here's the money reps.
Yeah,
Antonella's
the money reps. Yeah, no, it does how it makes sense to me in the world of like bodybuilding, lifting, right? It's just how it kind of makes sense. And that's basically what my reps is. So it's essentially eliminating the junk volume, trying to leverage rest intervals with activation sets in order to like optimize muscle fiber engagement. And there's just no evidence on it. So it's very similar also to the concept behind cluster reps.
I was going to say, I do cluster sets like that.
Clusters
Yeah.
and rest pause, right? So very similar to clusters and rest pause. One of the things about bioreps though is that you don't need to, it's actually not advised to reach failure. So something like clusters, right? You're trying to go to failure, you're chasing failure, especially with rest pause too, you're chasing failure, not so much with myo reps. Because it's more like hypertrophy oriented. So yeah, there's just no evidence, no literature published on it. There was a group out of the University of Tampa that did an abstract or published an abstract presented at NSCA 2022 on myo reps, I think. But there's no paper that's been published after that. So I'm hoping to be the first.
So you compared it to traditional training. So what was the traditional training?
Your typical like 3x10, 3 to 4 minutes rest in between each set.
So was the volume the same between the myo reps and did one group hypertrophy more or increase?
So no, I can't talk too much because we're still trying to publish this stuff. But I think the gist of it all is that myo reps work. And if you can imagine completing a myo rep set, it's no surprise that it can be done much quicker than a traditional set, right? Just based off of the manipulation of the rest intervals. So if you could complete the same amount of work in less time and see at the minimum the same amount of gains, why not do it, right? Like, why not try it? Why not implement it? Even if it's not, I wouldn't say it's the newest gold standard. Oh my gosh, ditch your traditional training for this. It's just another way to combat training plateaus, add some variation to your training in those early stages of hypertrophy, right? Like for team training, this could be a cool method to use instead of just, your basic.
How many weeks was the training and what was the frequency per week?
8 weeks, 3 times per week.
And these are trained or untrained?
Trained. Recreationally, I can't say they're the most advanced, but they're also not. They were familiar with the movements. They had to have been trained for at least a year or more. There was strength requirements, so 1.25 of your body weight in the squat and deadlift, and then 0.75 your body weight in bench press. So everybody had like metrics to reach or criteria.
And so, do you think this could be utilized, or do you think there'd be a disparity between whether the movement is isolating or compound, or there could be merit, for both?
I think there's merit for both. You can definitely use it for both. I would say that with the compound lifts, it would definitely require a foundation of strength already, and then some kind of, I wouldn't say expertise in lifting, but very comfortable with a barbell, because my reps is tough. My reps is tough. And with fatigue, your back's gonna give out before your legs give out, and you're gonna get hurt. So if you're a beginner, you want to try out my reps, I would say isolated movements, machine movements. It's really popular in bodybuilding. That's where I would first utilize it, at least.
Great.
So tell me a little bit about this thing you refer to as the gray zone on your website.
Yes.
When I see that, I'm thinking of The Gray Man, which is, by the way, was a really good movie, but much better books. I don't know if you're into spy books or whatnot, but The Gray Man is one of the best series. So
I'll add it to my list. No, the gray zone is just like in its infancy. It's basically my way of providing some foundational science education / training in sports science consulting to the general population. I think my love for this really stemmed from when I was working at a private training facility. I was working with like all kinds of athletes, teams, individual sessions, whatever the case might be. And I really found myself loving and spending a lot of time on the education portion just for simply buy-in, and two, because it was just a great talking point. And I mean, you get a lot of adherence. I mean, when the athletes are like, oh, they know what they're talking about, or they know why we're doing this, or they're explaining why we're doing something. It just was like one of those like click dynamite moments. And I found myself just like chasing that. And it's just very empowering for an athlete, anybody, to know why, where, when. There's evidence behind it, what they're doing. And so that's really where that was born, is, hey, people deserve to know when, where, why. People deserve to have the science like digested for them. Not everybody is equipped to read everything. They don't need to be. It's not their responsibility. That's why us, like, we do this stuff, right? And so that's where that was born. It's still very much in its infancy. As you can tell by my website, it's not fully, there. But yeah,
update the website.
I gotta update the website. But yeah, that's really what it is. It's just a way to disseminate science and get it out to people, and can join it with their training, whether it's rehab or training or nutrition.
Yeah, I think the idea of buy-in, particularly when it comes to nutrition advice and working with athletes, I think a lot of people sort of on the academic side are so focused on, I got to deliver the facts, when in fact, oftentimes the facts are secondary to whether or not they're going to even believe you. It's like, who the hell are you? It'd be like, if I went and gave a talk on nutrition or supplements in front of a bunch of ballerinas. I don't think they would really listen to me. They probably wouldn't listen to Tony. So they probably listen to you, though. It's all about buy-in, and like you published some data on MMA fighters, right?
Yeah. With Corey,
Right now, for instance, in terms of buy-in, Tony would have much more buy-in than I, because Tony actually does hands-on work with fighters. So I think the concept of buy-in is something that's often ignored when people are being trained. It's like, okay, now you know exercise, now you know nutrition, but you kind of know it, but how do you communicate it, and how do they accept you? So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I tell my students all the time, nobody cares if you know the textbook front to back, like the back of your hand, if you can't like communicate this to your clients, patients, whatever field you're going to go in. I know some of the smartest people that just can't talk to people. So like your knowledge is stuck in your brain, it's essentially useless, right? We do this to, at least I hope, to help others and, spread the word and advance the field and the professions, not just to like gatekeep all the knowledge in our brain. And so I think if you can't get buy-in, you can't communicate, you don't have people skills, and what's it for, So I tell them all the time, nobody cares what they want to know like that you're a real person, and you got to be able to tell them, communicate.
Conversely, though, I think we get too much buy-in now. Some people are constantly shopping on this little thing over here called a phone, right? And they're buying way too easy,
Yeah, totally.
You're talking about the self-appointed gurus, right?
Yeah, it's challenging.
We got a lot of that,
But you know what? In a way, it makes what we do more needed, because then the questions arise, if I'm going to do cold water immersion, should I do it for 4 minutes or 12 minutes? And it's like, it doesn't that is like dotting an I or crossing a T on a dissertation. It's not going to really impact, the final product. So there's so many things now that are being, I guess, promoted on social media, and even by PhDs and also by physicians. It does create, you're right, Tony, right? Well, it creates a buy-in for strangers, people who don't know you. But I think when you're working one-on-one, it's a much different relationship. I'm sure, Tony, if I'm trying to think, who would be the antithesis of mixed martial arts, but let's say knows his or her stuff. Would that person, and you don't have to name names, I'm sure you know people, that person, if they get up in front of a group of 4 or 5 fighters, would they even be listened to?
Right. Oh, gosh, in most cases, probably not. The problem does become, though, there are a host of individuals in a given discipline these days. And then what I find is if there's any conflicting opinions, perspectives, or data, they're running all over the place. Like sometimes that is the greater challenge today, getting the buy-in is very important, I think, on that one-on-one or small group basis, or, you know, whether you're working with the athletes or what Dr. Antonella is saying here with her students, absolutely. However, you know, if there are people that do a pretty good job today at disguising themselves as an expert in a given discipline and just confusing, like I said, with too much buy-in, right? But the buy-in becomes really important on a one-on-one level. On a social media level, that's a whole nother animal. People are really good at it. And then half the time we have to refute a lot of what we're seeing now.
Yeah, the scary part too is that a lot of this misinformation is like interwoven with actual truths, and so things just get so skewed. And I mean, it's easy to perceive and, oh, that makes sense, but like you don't see like the small little lies that are interwoven there that essentially, you know, everything else to crap. So that's the scary part, is half of it is kind of true, but most of it's not.
Good point.
Scary times.
That's true. If you say, you know, 5 or 6 true things, but then the 7th and 8th one is just bullshit, it's there's not many people who pick up the bullshit, but
Right.
it's like, hey, those first 5 or 6 things, you know, it kind of made sense. But yeah, there's people who just make up stuff on social media, and it's really kind of nuts. Now, going back to, you're currently at Barry University. You just started recently, right?
Started, yeah, August.
Wow.
On the contingency that I would defend this fall, and I was like, oh gosh, okay. So
wow,
that's my job.
you know, it's got to be exciting to be, you know, to have finally finished. And do you have any advice for students who are close to finishing or in the PhD process? Like the job hunt and things like that, because those are questions I actually get semi-frequently from grad students.
Yeah. I think the best advice that I could give is to say yes to every potential opportunity, not like a job offer, but yes to, hey, do you want to work on this together? Sure. Do you want to go here? Sure. Do you want to come to this conference? Do you want to help me with this paper? Sure. Because you just don't know who you're going to cross paths with. And you could also discover things that you like and don't like. And so I think most of my career, a lot of it, and as a student, was realizing what I didn't like what I don't like, what I don't want to do with the rest of my life. And if I hadn't said yes to specific opportunities that I hated, I would never have known. And so, yeah, I mean, how I got connected with you guys is so cool. I mean, I just randomly emailed Corey. I'm like, hey, I am a student. I am looking for opportunities. I love what you do. Yada, yada, yada. I emailed so many people. He replied, amazing. I got so many no's, no answers, whatever. He replied, let's work on this. Let's meet here. Let's do this. Great. Then I meet you guys and I go to the fight science stuff. Then we publish some stuff with UFC fighters. I mean, it's a butterfly effect, right? Like one small thing can lead to so much more. And no job, no position, no anything I've ever gotten before was just due to like an application, send it in, pray for, you know, an acceptance. It's always been because I knew somebody, or because I was involved with this person and we collaborated on this, or because I said yes to this opportunity and they knew this person. I mean, I got the job at Barry because I was working as a PRN athletic trainer at Barry whenever they needed help with game coverage or in the training room. And I would always say yes. I was always on time. You know, it just, the small things go a long way. And then a position opened up and I was in the training room that day and I walked over to the like faculty's office. I'm like, hey, I actually kind of work here and I want a job and I'm going to graduate soon. So can I apply for this? And they're like, sure. So they already had a face to the name when my application,
that helps.
Yeah, when the CV pops through and they, you know, it's just, I just always encourage people to get involved in as much as you can before you graduate, because you never know what it's going to lead to. And every opportunity that I've just like reached out and, hey, yes, let's do this. It's all eventually worked out for the better, whether it's, you know, discovering what I like or what I don't like. So.
Yeah, I always tell young, you know, students who are going to graduate or have graduated and they're sort of at the beginning of their career is, my motto was say yes to everything, figure the details out later.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. And the thing is, you're right. One of the more important lessons is you'll find out what you don't like.
Yeah.
But you have to say yes. And you're like, boy, that really sucked. I'm not going to say yes to that. But you end up meeting sort of, you know, serendipitously people who otherwise you may not have ever met. I mean, like just the crew at Nova, you know, myself and Tony and Corey and whatnot. I mean, on your website, it says we're the coolest group ever. It says right there.
Well, you totally are. Like, totally are.
So when you update it, make sure you put our pictures there. That's
Of
all.
course, of course, of course.
That's all I'm asking. So, you know, it's always exciting to be new faculty. So I'm sure they're saying, okay, you got to teach, you got to do service. But what research projects did you have, or are you going to have ongoing at Barry, other than, of course, any collaboration that you have with me, which those will be the coolest projects, just so you know.
Absolutely, absolutely. So one of the really fun parts of my job now is that the athletic training program at Barry, as you know, like all the undergrad programs, it's no more because now you have to have a master's. So the undergrad programs just don't exist. So they had this athletic training or rehab lab. But like we already spoke about, my philosophy in athletic training and rehab is very different from the traditional stuff you see, like modalities and cupping and, you know, and so in this lab, that's all that there is. In this lab, there are treatment tables, there are ultrasound, e-stim, tape, etc. Right? So there's not a weight in sight. And I am just, how can you perform any kind of rehab without a weight? It's beyond me, right? So my philosophy is very much in like rehab is strength and conditioning, and strength and conditioning is rehab. So how can we not, like, the two need to coexist, and there need to be like weights in a rehab lab. There needs to be research done on with strength components, not just taping, cupping, you know, that kind of stuff. So that's the goal. Is right now I'm tasked with, hey, transform this lab. Of course, I'm gonna need some like funding and some money from the school, but I've got a lot of fun toys I want to buy. But yeah, so basically what my future plans are transforming the lab to have some kind of resistance training modalities in there, not just taping and cupping, and to pump out some cool research. The strength and conditioning department got some bald equipment, like force decks and the timing gate. So we actually have a meeting about that tomorrow with Vald. So gonna try and get some of those projects up and running this next semester. But yeah, basically it's just revolutionizing what people once thought, or what the school once thought rehab was, into what rehab actually is. Like if you need a barbell if you're going to be doing any form of rehab. You need some kind of testing metrics if you're going to be doing any form of rehab. I mean, there's so much you need, and if you're just using cupping and modalities, that you're just, at best, you're guessing, right? And nobody wants to guess when you're ready to return to play after an ACL, because the chances of re-tearing skyrocket. So I'm changing all of that. And so that's kind of my project.
Fantastic. Yeah. More active strategies as opposed to just passive, and where there may be some merit to your point, but certainly participation and strengthening and conditioning and plyometric when needed and when possible, or have to be an integral part, particularly if they're to return to sport. Yeah.
Now, do you have your students? These are all the grad students are master students, right? Right now, this past semester, I've only taught undergrad. So next semester, I am teaching the physiology of strength and conditioning, and I will have some master's students in that class. Not exactly sure how many yet, but I will have some in that class. And so, yeah, it's a mixture of undergrad and master students. Now, going through graduate school, we like to get students involved in various professional organizations, and you can be completely, honest about your involvement, whether it's with ACSM, NSCA, ISSN. What would you tell students in terms of, because obviously they have limited money and limited time, mostly limited money, right? Like they could just go to all these conferences. You haven't been to ACSM National. I used to go all the time. I mean, but I quit doing it 20 years ago. But I remember ACSM National versus ACSM Regional. I always thought regional was much better. And the reason I thought it was much better is it was a lot smaller. So you could actually talk to people, whereas the national meeting is it's just a bunch of bees buzzing around, and there's just too many people. So what are your thoughts on that? Sort of think of it as advice for students. Because you can't be everywhere at once. 100%. I would say take advantage of whatever opportunity presents itself. And at Barry, we go to the Greater New York and the Southeast ACSM like regionals. And then I am active in the ISSN, love the ISSN. I'll be bringing students to ISSN this summer. And it's local, right? So they don't have to travel. It's not going to cost them an arm and a leg. And so I would encourage
at least students in South Florida, one, get involved in the ISSN, and two, let's say you do want to get involved in the regional ACSM conferences, get involved, come up with an idea for an abstract. My students know that if they come up with an idea, I will help them create it. We will go, we'll find a way. There's ways to raise funds on campus and whatnot by getting involved in the lab. So yeah, I would just encourage all the students to do their best to kind of plug in, and you just never know who you're going to meet at these conferences, what you're going to come by, discover what you like and what you don't like. And so, yeah, I would say conferences are a must. They're hard to get to, but the regional ones more accessible, and ISSN is extremely accessible for my students. So,
Because we're always in Florida.
yeah, always in Florida. And so
Yes.
I'm hoping to be there. And yeah, they're going to join me.
And actually also Neurosports. Tony, tell us a little bit about the conferences in February.
Yeah, so we'll be February 20th in the great city of Deerfield. That's at the Wyndham there. So we have Friday and Saturday of February, that is. Dr. Thomas Fritz of the Max Planck Institute is coming back to speak as one of our keynotes. And quickly on that conference, it's really fun, everyone, because it's an integration of numerous disciplines: sports psychology, neuroscience, exercise physiology, and what is a new field in and of itself, sport neuroscience. So it's really exciting. We make an effort to marry the brain, the general mechanisms on how it functions, and then how the periphery may be impacted as a result of that. It's a lot of fun. It's a good time. So hopefully for those in Southeast Florida region or are pretty local, they can come join us. That's neurosport.net. Yep, neurosports.net in order to find information. It's coming February.
Yeah, if you have an abstract, Antonella, or one of your students, it's a good place to present.
Yeah.
And also by next June, when ISSN in Delray Beach comes around, I mean, you'll be giving a short talk on myoreps, right?
I sure will. I sure will.
Fantastic.
Yeah, Peter Byers. He's presenting some of our stuff with the GPS MMA tracking that we did at Neurosports. So we do have an abstract there.
Oh, cool.
Very cool.
Can you share any of that data, or at least top line information?
Yeah, I'll let Peter share that at the conference. I'll let Peter share that. I'm not going to steal his, he's the first author on that, so I won't steal his thunder, but just some cool stuff, some tracking we did with the guys over at the gym, and yeah, it's fun. They're wearing the cool GPS vests, and it'll be cool. He'll have a lot of that info. We also presented a little bit of that at ISSN this last summer. But yeah.
Yeah, and if you have any students, we're always looking for data blitzers, do 60-second talks. That's always a fun thing for students. It gives them, it's not so long that, you know, it's almost like you don't have time to be nervous because you only have 1 minute to talk. You know,
that was me last summer, and then I got the buzzer. Oh my gosh, just crap out of me.
Well,
yeah.
Some people deserve the buzzer, so.
No, I agree totally. I will definitely have students at ISSN and every year moving forward, because how can I not, right? I mean, it's in Florida too. Easy.
Now tell us a little bit. We don't have much time, but you're a pretty avid exerciser. People always wonder, like, hey, Tony, what do you do for training? Or, you know, everyone knows I paddle, and then maybe I'll do something else, but really I just paddle. What do you do for training? Do you have any goals? And also in terms of supplementation and nutrition?
Yeah. So I have always been a runner. I'm not the fastest. I've always been a runner though. Ever since I mean, in like elementary school, I was on like an AAU track team.
Wow.
Junior Olympics for track. I was a quick little one.
Wait, what distance?
It was, oh gosh. So it was like a Junior Olympic heptathlon. And so I think we did, it was jumps, the 400, all the fun, all the fun stuff. It was fun. Yeah. And so that's where my love for running started. I used to go to the Boys and Girls Club, and they had a track club, and then we got super involved in that. And they're like, wait, you're kind of good. And then the rest is history. And then I ran all of high school, had a really great team, wasn't fast enough to run D1, really wanted to go to University of Florida. So retired my running career then. And that's kind of how I got picked up bodybuilding. And that's where my love for resistance training really began in the weight room. And so competed in bodybuilding for a little, no more of that. Learned a lot, really learned what I was made of. I mean, that's quite the mental game. Really learned what I was made of. Really learned a lot about hypertrophy and skeletal muscle and how to put it on, like the practical, non-scientific side of it all. And then I learned the science after that. But now I do a mixture of both. Now I run and lift. I'm more so into weightlifting than hypertrophic bodybuilding style lifting, but I mean, you still get some of those same adaptations, so that's fun. And yeah, I'm really passionate about running. I love half marathons. I've run a marathon, never again, never again.
Wow, you
The
ran
half is
what marathon? What marathon was this?
Miami. I ran Miami this year, earlier this
Wait,
year.
Oh,
that's
wow.
not exactly a cold weather marathon.
Oh, it was miserable. I tell you,
It's usually in January, right?
yes,
But it's
It's still warm, yeah.
it was excruciating. Like I think at like mile 20, I almost shed a tear. I had goosebumps because I was so hot. I was just, it was, I mean, the night before they sent an advisory, a heat advisory. They said, do not expect to PR tomorrow. I've never seen so many ambulance bikes, ambulance golf carts in my life.
now, Antonella, okay, this between the three of us, you of course know better that you never run a marathon in hot weather unless you want to die.
Listen,
That especially a first-time marathon, go to Chicago, New York, somewhere cold.
I know.
No, you ran it in Miami.
I know. Here's the thing is I had run the half in Miami before. And so in the year before that, when I ran the half, it was cool. It was cold. And I was like, oh, great. Like I'll run the marathon next year. It'll be fine. It'll be great. Like the weather's great. I'm not kidding when I tell you there was an advisory sent and it said that it was a record heat for Florida January. Like this has never happened before. It was an anomaly. And of course I was like, great. The first time I'm running, I'm trying to like run under 4 hours and I've got all these big goals. And the night before they're like, yeah, don't expect to PR. They had like red flags up along like the course. I was mad.
Will you share your time? What was your time?
Like 4:35, horrible. For
Oh.
myself, at least. I mean, I'm thinking I'm like on pace in my training to run under 4 hours. I'm like, oh, it's gonna be great. I'm gonna run a 3:59. It's gonna be amazing. And yeah, no, not even. I mean, no way.
What were the temps about, Antonella?
Say that again?
What were the temperatures that day approximately? I'm sure the humidity was up.
Like in the 80s, 80, sun is shining. You're running over like Key Biscayne Bridge or whatever, no shade in the middle of the day.
So basically,
I gotta
the possibly worst conditions for running 26.2 miles.
Yeah, and it scarred me. It ruins me. I'm like, you know what? I'm done with the full. I will only run halves from now on. And I ran a half this past weekend. And it went great in Charleston and Kiowa Island, South Carolina.
Well, that's pretty, yeah.
Weather was great. It was a fast course. Great time. I mean, it was great. It was great.
But you didn't have any lingering injuries from the marathon. No, nothing.
No. I attribute that to my resistance training regimen.
That's really good.
It does help.
Wood. Yeah, knock on wood, but I really haven't had many running injuries. And I think it's because I lift heavyweight.
No, it definitely helps. I mean, Tony, do you have plans to run a marathon or half?
No, not in this lifetime again. You know, I did run 17 miles. That was my longest run.
That's incredible.
That's a weird
Reebok
distance.
high tops on purpose, just to see, you know, what I could take. But that was years ago. I did a lot more running those days. And then as I aged, my body and I went back to like a lot more judo and jiu-jitsu, my body just blows up. Muscle comes on and structurally it doesn't make any sense you know. I can't, I have to go take like 5 years off of weightlifting and run from here to Nevada to lose muscle. And if I do anything but that, Antonella, then I just muscle. And I'm not trying to, you know, sound like boasting. I'd rather look like Brad Pitt and be built at 160 pounds. But unfortunately, my body is just a hypertrophic blob.
Yeah. I love that. Honestly, what a problem, right? Like what a problem to have.
It's odd, but yeah, just sprints now. By the way, sprinting, and one of the things, and you could correct me just quickly if I'm wrong, I know we're running out of time, but one of the things that set my joints back 20 years positively from degeneration, I've been swimming, I'm not very good, but it's spectacular on the body, and my joint recovery has been amazing from that.
I love that. I mean, you're like removing gravity from the equation.
Exactly.
Yeah, and the water does provide some resistance, right? So absolutely love the idea of swimming. It's, I mean, one of the first things you do when you jump into the rehab, progression.
Exactly, yeah.
You can't get on the ground. Let's get you in the pool. So yeah,
Awesome.
love that.
Well, when Antonella starts reaching that age, Tony, where you and I are at, she will seek those non-impact sports.
We'll see.
She'll be either running. You might want to try paddling, non-impact. In fact, I would almost think paddling is similar to swimming in terms of it's non-impact, it's whole body. Obviously, the only difference is you're standing upright versus versus horizontal. But we'll have to get you on a board, Antonella. We'll have to get you on a board.
I've done a little bit of paddling. I actually did in college. I did a paddle race where I think it was you run a 5K first and then you paddle a 5K if I remember correctly. And I mean, I don't even remember how long it took me, but it was fun and I loved it. I really did.
That does sound fun.
Yeah, it was fun. Like the running before the paddling though, I was like, whew, my legs were
Okay, Antonella, we're out of time, but tell the audience where they can find you if they want to find you on social media, whether it's on X or Instagram, or what's the best place?
Yeah, Instagram. I really don't do any of the other social medias, but Instagram, LinkedIn a little bit. I'm not the most active, but I know it's like the scholarly academic thing to do. So LinkedIn,
Instagram is crazy. Instagram, you let whatever friend you accept them, and all of a sudden it's like, hey, I'd like to sell you stuff. What?
Totally.
Like, no, I don't really want to buy stuff. I thought you were someone who might be good, good to know. But anyways, Instagram, what's your name on Instagram? How do they find you?
dr.antonella.schwarz. No T.
I follow you.
dr.antonella.schwarz. And yes, do not put a T at the end. I've made that mistake many times. So, hey, Dr. Antonella Schwarz, thank you very much for being on the Sports Science Dude. Hey, it's almost Christmas, so Merry Christmas to you, Tony. Merry Christmas to Antonella.
Yeah, have a great holiday.
Yeah, and I guess we'll recap, in 2025.
Let's do it. Yeah, ISSN if you want to hear about my reps.
Absolutely.
All right, thanks, guys. Thanks, Antonella.
Great show. Thank you.